Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chaotic Little Book Corner. I put a on the shelf tag request out to the Instagram world and I received several answers, which you can see. And so I am going to tell you quickly how the on the shelf tag works, and then I'm gonna dive in. So the way it works is I put out two different numbers. One is my number of shelves and one is the number within those shelves of the books. So I put out between 1 and 5 for the first number and then 1 and 20 for the second number. So 5 shelves per shelf and then 1 to 20 books on each shelf. So I am going to dive in, and let's start with the first number, which is 2 and 13, and that would be on my classic shelf, and this is F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby. Now, I'm sure everyone knows The Great Gatsby story. If you don't, it is the story of the 1920s. It is written by F. Scott Fitzgerald. It is about a young man named Gatsby who is in love with a girl named Daisy, and things get weird. I don't know how else to explain it. If you don't know the story, it's a really good book to read. If you do know the story, you would probably agree with me that things get weird. Next was number 5 and 17, and that would be on my nonfiction shelf. This is How Does That Make You Feel? True Confessions from Both Sides of the Therapy Couch, and it's edited by Sherry Amenstein. Now this one I received for review from Seal Press. I absolutely adored this. This comes from both sides of the couch, as meaning that this talks from the perspective of the therapist and those who are going to therapy. So I really enjoyed this. It had some really great essays written by both sides of people. I got to know a lot about what it's like to be a therapist and the sorts of things you see and think and feel. And I also got to experience a few people who are what they like to call couch dating, which is that they go from therapist to therapist to try and find the right therapist. And it's an interesting concept. I had never thought of it before, but it was interesting. Then we had numbers 5 and 1, which I then moved over to my fiction shelf. This is Feminist on Fire, and it's by Colleen Caron. Now, I haven't talked about this in a hot second. I was sent this by Formite Press. This is a fabulous novel. It's about a woman who is I believe, I haven't read this in like 6 months, and I think she had... It's the harrowing story of the founding member of a feminist radical group who was a feminist radical in the 1960s to 70s, and she wrote books and co-wrote books and essays, and she's widely recognized. She was an abused child, and then she went on to suffer from schizophrenia, and this is her story told by her niece, I want to say. I actually really loved this. It is dark though, and if you are not ready for something really morbid and dark, this may not be for you, but it's beautifully written. It's really interesting. It's a short little novel, and it has a lot of punch to it. It definitely talks about schizophrenia and the experience of child abuse and how abuse can affect a person throughout their life, and so can trauma and feminism and fighting for what is right. It's really relevant right now. I really enjoy it, and I think it's a good book to recommend. Then number 3 and 19, so that went on to my shorter shelves, which are sizes of 3 shelves, and on that was my YA shelf. This is The Few by Katherine McSporn. I was sent this for review by Freight Publishing, and this is by the author of Cold City, which I talk about quite frequently. This actually is a YA little book. It is fantastic. It talks about World War II and Nazis and fighting the good fight, and yeah, honestly, it's a fantasy style war book, and it's really interestingly done. I really enjoyed it. Kathy McSporn is one of my favorite authors, and I really love her work. I'm very excited because I think there's a sequel to this coming out, which makes me very happy. So this is witches versus vampires, basically, run by Winston Churchill fighting the Nazis. It's pretty darn interesting and a lot of fun to read. Then we went back oh, nope, then we stayed on the shorter shelves, and this is my unread fiction. This is The Enchanted, a novel by Renee Denfield. I know I should probably read this. I know I will probably really enjoy it, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And yeah, it is blurbed on top by Erin Morgenstein, who is the author of The Night Circus. I don't know why I haven't read this yet. Probably because everything else seems to surpass it. And plus, I'm really trying to read lighter books right now because I'm a little tired. And that's okay. Then we hopped over to my extra shelf, which is all the way on the other side of the room, and that number was 1 and 7, and the story on there was my unread thriller horror. This is Sister by Rosamund Lupton. Now, I saw this on Jen Campbell's channel, and I picked it up, and I never picked it up, actually, to read it. So I actually don't remember a darn thing about what this is about. I feel like I should remember because she swore up and down that it was fantastic. I haven't read it yet, and I'm still curious to read it, which is why I've kept it on my shelf, but it's not a top priority. Then we came back to our larger shelves, which was the numbers. I think I've been forgetting to tell you the numbers this entire way through. Yes, I have. Then we came back over here to the sci-fi shelf, and that was 2 and 17, and on that one, we have J.G. Ballard, High Rise. If you have not seen this film, if you have not read this book, it is dystopian, chilling creepiness in the 70s at its highest. The wealthy become more and more controlling of this environment that is a apartment building, and the lower class and poorer community of this building become more and more violent and aggressive towards the wealthy. And it is the downfall of a culture and society within a building. It's pretty darn relevant right now. That's all I'm going to say. And then we hopped over to so somebody picked 7 and 20, which I don't have a 7th shelf, so I counted over from my shelf on the other side, and then I counted down 2 more shelves, and that ended me on my short story collection. This is Different Women by Roxane Gay. This I received in my lit box this month. I am very excited to read it, but I've heard trigger warnings really, really high on this, so I'm holding off. Then we have number 2 and 19. This is The Leopard Compound by Paula Nagil. And this is the story of a woman who lives in Africa, Southern Africa, she lives in Southern Africa, in a compound that is made up of a bunch of people that are mostly white, trying to help the current situation and to study, and she is separated from her sister, who suffers from schizophrenia, because they think her sister will be better off in a location where she can get help, but she begins to deteriorate because her sister is her rock. It's really, really well done. It's really, really interesting, and it talks a lot about isolation and madness and mental illness being exacerbated. Is that the right word? Worsened by isolation in and of itself. This is a book written by a woman who was raised on a missionary in the U.S. And Southern Africa. So this is actually, I don't know if it's semi-autobiographical, but it's definitely well-researched. There was a lot of terminology in this that I had to look up, and history. It really caused me to get involved and to think, and I really enjoyed that about this book. Then we have, over on my nonfiction shelf, The Sex and Myth and the Gap Between Our Fantasies and Reality by Rachel Hills. I purchased this online through a private bookstore. I believe it was Paperweight Books, and they are in Massachusetts. And I purchased it through them specifically because they were having an event. And in that event, this author here, Rachel Hills, and Sex Objects, Jessica Valenti came, and I was going to go to the event, but unfortunately my health did not allow me, so they were kind enough to get these actually signed to me and then send them to me, which I was very, very grateful for. I have not had time to pick this one up. I have read Sex Object and adored it, and this one I know is going to be relevant as well now, talking about the sex experience now, the sexual revolution, what is different, what is now considered normal for sexual relations in relationships. I'm very, very, very excited to read this when I get to it, but it's definitely something that I'm being careful on because I don't know how enraged it will make me. This is Leslie Walton's The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. I saw this way back when I was first starting BookTube, and I fell in love with the cover, and I fell in love with the idea of the story, but I have never picked it up. And, you know, as much as I feel like I love the cover, I feel like eventually I'll pick it up, but I don't know when, so I don't really know what to tell you. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, We Should All Be Feminists. This really needs no introduction. It is really, really, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it's a good, I guess, starter into feminism. It really just explains why people are feminists and why it's a good idea to be a feminist. I enjoyed it. It packs a punch. It's a great story, and I believe it is a TED Talk. So I really, really like this, and I have given it to a few people in the last year or so just as a little gift. Then this was recommended to me during my Diversathon as books to talk about the trans experience. This is Annabelle by Kathleen Winter. I have had this on my shelf for a while, and I've heard amazing things, and I cannot tell you why I haven't picked it up because I don't have a reason. I really, really want to pick it up, but I myself have a really strong struggle with the experience of people being trans, not because of them themselves, but because of how they're treated. It breaks my heart, and it really makes me sad, and I feel so responsible when they're hurt, and I really struggle to read books about their experience because I feel so upset. And then we have The Regulars by Georgia Clark. This one I love just because of the story behind the book purchase itself. This one I purchased on my birthday weekend, and there's a whole story if you want to hear about it. It's in my birthday book haul. If I can remember which one, I'll link it down below. And I read this and I really enjoyed it. I think it was interesting. It had some diverse characters. It had some conversations about sex and some very honest conversations about the experience of women nowadays in a current society. I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was anything phenomenal, but I think it's fantastic in that I think it's an interesting nod to the books that have come before it, such as The Handmaid's Tale, honestly. I think it gives a good nod to that. And then our last, but are not least, is Future by Dmitry Govglasky. And this one is going to be one of my books that I plan to read between 600 and 1,000 pages at some point this year. It is a dystopian sci-fi taking place in Russia. So, yes, I myself am curious and very intrigued. I know very little, but it's interesting font, actually, and it's large font. So I'm excited, and yeah, this is going to be very interesting. I'm really not sure how else to explain it. I went into this kind of blind, so I'm excited to read it, though. So there you have my on the shelf tag. If you are still following me on Instagram and would like to continue commenting, I would be more than happy to do a second one of these videos at some point, so don't feel like you have to wait. All right, I will talk to you soon. Bye.